right, good afternoon. We'll call to order the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals, a regular meeting for September 28th, 2016. The first item on our agenda is a consideration of minutes for the regular meeting from August 24th, 2016. Are there any changes needed for those? If not, those will be approved, and then we'll move on to the minutes from the special meeting that was held on the same day. Are there any changes necessary to those? Seeing none, we'll approve those. Then next, we'll move on to new business. The first item is special use permit request. It's application Z16058 by Kirk Fisher, requesting a special use permit to allow a home occupation and accountant office on property in the duplex residential district located at 807 North Church Street. Mr. Anthony, if you would review that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. The applicant, Kirk Fisher, wishes to operate a home occupation and accountant office in his single-family house located at 807 North Church Street. The subject property is approximately 0.27 acres and lies within the duplex residential zoning district. The proposed accountant office would occupy about 232 square feet of the 2,964 square foot house and would be accessed via a designated door located near the southeastern corner of the house. The applicant indicates that he anticipates seeing 10 to 20 clients per year at his home. He would eventually like to have 50 to 75 clients. The number and frequency of visits are not mentioned in the request letter. Clients would be seen by appointment only. Hours of operation would be 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekends. With previous special use permit applications for home occupations, the board has typically prohibited nighttime operating hours. Further, the board has often required staggered appointment times in order to prevent traffic congestion. In this particular case, the applicant's low client volume may be a factor in how the board reviews hours of operation. Regardless of the operating hours, staff recommends that the board require appointment times to be staggered such that no two clients are on the premises at the same time. Chart 4 of the zoning ordinance requires 4 parking spaces for single-family dwelling units. The applicant's driveway, including the covered carport, appears to be of sufficient width and depth to accommodate up to 8 vehicles. The applicant has agreed to abide by all of the general and specific standards for special use permits and for home occupations. While the applicant's request letter did not mention signage, staff recommends that the board, in accordance with section 9B2RR2 zoning ordinance, allow the applicant the option of installing an attached sign no larger than 3 square feet in area to the house. Staff can answer any questions that you may have, and we do have 4 recommended conditions of approval, which I will read. Number 1, all client visits shall be by appointment only. 2, days and hours of operation shall be limited to those requested by the applicant in the request letter. 3, the applicant shall arrange appointment times such that no appointment begins less than 15 minutes after another appointment ends. And 4, in accordance with section 9D2RR2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, 1 business sign not exceeding 3 square feet may be attached to the house. All signage shall adhere to the standards set forth in the Murfreesboro sign ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions you have for staff at this point? If not, we'll allow the applicant, Mr. Fisher, anything you'd like to add? Not sure if he's here. Anything you'd like to add to the application? Yes, sir. Okay. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present that wishes to speak for or against this application, if you'd come forward and state your name and address and give us any comments you may have. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussions or a motion.
Mr. Fisher, if you don't mind, I got a question for you. Just the whole hours of operation, as Mr. Anthony mentioned, when we've done or when we've approved in-home occupations, usually we haven't approved the hours past, say, 5 or 6 o'clock. I know when I go see my accountant, they're not going to allow me to come between 5 and 9 Can you give me some background why you're wanting that type of hours for this business?
Sure. Yeah, it's a side business for me. I have a full-time job Monday through Friday during regular
Okay.
business hours, so it just works out, and clients I've had in the past are happy to see me in the evening. So
Okay. Is there a way to, with the number of clients that you are looking for, is there a way to limit it just on the Saturday hours, or you really need the hours during the night to accommodate the 15 to 20 clients that you have currently?
no, I mean, I'm able to take off Fridays every so often and see clients during the day too. So yeah, I'll try to keep the evening traffic to a minimum.
Well, I'm almost of the opinion not having it at all. That's where I'm going with it. This would be, as long as I've been on this board, this would be the first time that we've ever approved any kind of nighttime hours for an in-home business.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can see them on the weekends only.
Okay.
Well, within that, I have more of a question
Yeah,
for
go
you or for the staff. With respect to that, what's the latest hour that has been a precedence, I guess, would be my question to you, Ken, or to the staff.
So in the past, in the last year and a half at least that I've been doing these, 6 o'clock tends to be the cutoff time. As you'll remember, last month there was a counseling office, and she asked for some sort of off hours, but that's been the only one that I can think of during the time that I've worked here, that anything beyond 6 p.m. In the evening.
And I don't recall what we ended up, did we approve that counseling?
You did. You put some very specific conditions on it as far as the number of people and that kind of thing. I do not have that staff report with me right now, but it was, as I recall, only a certain number of people could come. And because of the nature of her business, it was almost looked at like a group study of some kind. You know, it was a little bit different kind of business than people coming and going at staggered times.
Well, I understand, and from reading his application, of course, I understand you work for Tennessee Farmers Co-op in Laverne, and with your normal work hours there, even a 6 o'clock end time
That would help.
would that help? Would it be?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Are we still under?
You're fine.
Okay. So even with an extended time, given the number of people and the type of business that impact that he has from the traffic, it would appear to me that that's not overbearing, you know, to have maybe a little extended time.
Right. I just don't want to set a precedent of hours of operations in an in-home business. That would be my only issue. I mean, if he can work through 6 o'clock, I don't have an issue with that. I just don't want to start setting precedents of having in-home businesses open to 9 o'clock, no matter what they are. If there's going to be people coming in and out, granted, there's not going to be that many people, but I would not want to set that precedent, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. 6 o'clock would be nice, though.
I'm okay, given like the client volume, allow maybe a 5 to 6 during the week. If that'll help me, like I said, based on, I know it's hard, okay, when it gets to a certain volume, when to do something different, that'll be hard to police, I understand that, but I think I'd be okay to allow an hour while he's growing his business.
You know, without the prior knowledge, my first thought was 9 o'clock seems a little long, and I was more in terms of 7 or 8, but you know, as you said, you want to be careful about the precedents that you set for one type of industry or one type of in-home business as opposed to all. So.
Right.
I certainly wouldn't have any problem with extending it to 7 o'clock, since it would be just adults.
Well, I mean, just given the likelihood of the number of people that are going to come in a given year, it doesn't seem like that's such a burden. I mean, I hate to pick out a particular, I don't want to single out anybody, but if you take massage therapist or someone that's a hairstylist or some of those other types of occupations that might have an in-home, they've got to see a whole lot more clients than in a weekly basis to be viable than what he's proposing. Of course, I granted, once you approve it, there's nothing, it's going to be hard to regulate it after that part.
Yeah, the traffic would be minimal, and it'd mostly just be during tax season anyhow, so.
I'll make a motion. Y'all have convinced me, so I'll make a motion that we approve this application, but approve the weekday hours to 7 p.m. I'd hopefully give you 2 hours to fit in 10 to 20, or whatever you're wanting to do at a later date, and then the hours that are proposed. Well, before I finish my motion, I meant to ask a question. Are you going to be putting up a sign or no?
Yeah, I will put a small sign.
Okay. All right. So, again, I'll make a motion we approve this application subject to the parameters and staff comments, including the sign piece, weekday hours to 7 p.m., and then approve the hours that you've got dictated for Saturday.
Second.
Having a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to application Z16059 by William Kennedy, requesting a special use permit to allow a group daycare center on property in the single-family residential district located at 1411 Marymount Drive. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Thank you, sir. The applicant, William Kennedy, wishes to operate a group daycare home in a single-family house located at 1411 Marymount Drive in the North Point Hall subdivision. A group daycare home may provide care for between 7 and 12 children. The subject property is situated at the southwest corner of the intersection of Marymount Drive and Laurel Hill Court. The property has a total area of about 0.32 acres and lies within the single-family residential RS10 zoning district. According to the applicant's request letter, the applicant's daughter resides at the subject property and will work at the group daycare home. The applicant intends to convert the existing garage into a classroom and construct a loop driveway along Laurel Hill Drive to accommodate drop-off and pickup traffic. Proposed hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. The applicant intends to construct a fence around the backyard to provide both an outdoor play area for the children attending the daycare and a means of additional privacy for neighbors. Section 9D2BB of the zoning ordinance lists specific standards for group daycare homes. The first two standards relate to vehicular access to the site. The applicant has provided 2 diagrams showing possible locations for the proposed loop driveway. If properly constructed, a loop driveway should satisfy the access standards listed in Section 9D2BB 1 through 2. However, because no final design has been selected, staff recommends that the board condition any approval on the applicant providing planning staff with a final site layout showing the location, dimensions, and parking capacity of the loop driveway. Staff can answer any questions that you may have. We have received written correspondence from one neighbor, which I distributed to you. And then we also recommend the following 3 conditions. Number 1, hours of operation shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Number 2, the applicant shall provide a copy of the required statement from the Tennessee Department of Human Services to the City of Murfreesboro. The DHS statement shall conform to the requirements listed in Section 9D2BB3 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance. And condition 3, the applicant shall provide the planning department a final site layout showing the proposed location, dimensions, and parking capacity of the loop driveway. The exhibit shall demonstrate that the on-site, off-street parking requirements for all proposed uses can be accommodated. Planning department approval in consultation with transportation and engineering of the driveway layout shall be obtained prior to construction of the driveway. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this point? Did you probably mentioned it and I missed it, how many cars do they need to be able to handle? Or is there, oh, it didn't say? Okay.
Give me a minute and
Okay,
I'll
that's
find
fine.
that out, okay? I thought I included it
Sure
in the
that-
report and failed to.
Okay. Let's go on to the public hearing. Yep, the applicant, see if the applicant adds anything. Mr. Kennedy, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Can I go ahead and answer
Okay.
before? Okay. So with a single-family house, you do have to have 4 parking spaces for a single-family house. And then in addition, for a group daycare home, it's 1.5 for each 2 employees employed on the largest shift plus 2 for each business vehicle. So we would need that data from the applicant, which I don't know that was included in the application packet, but we would need that data in order to make a firm determination on how many spaces
Okay.
would be required.
Okay.
Hello. I brought my brains with me because she's the one who really understands all of this. Again, my name is Bill Kennedy. This is Melissa Kennedy. We are the homeowners at 1411 Marymount Drive. And we moved our daughter and our 2 grandbabies from a very poor neighborhood in Wilson County to Murfreesboro to get her a better situation. And because of that, we also would like to be able to get her an income and be able to stay home with our grandbabies. So because of that, we were making this application and trying to get a group daycare on that property so that we can get an income for her so she can stay at home with our grandbabies. We currently live at 102 Manning Court in Rutherford County, and we have a group daycare that we run out of it. And when we went through the zoning for that, we also had similar concerns about what we were doing and how we were doing it and why we were doing it. And we'd like to address some of those concerns. First of all, home value. When I refinanced in 2009, our home value was at $209,000. All the additions that we have made to the home, we just now refinanced again, and our home is now worth $254,000. We're wanting to make those same adjustments at the Marymount. We're wanting to put a privacy fence around the backyard. We're wanting to put a loop driveway. We're wanting to enclose the garage. I think Melissa gave you some pictures of our current daycare and all the wonderful things that we do with our young kids there. The property value went up, and this is about a year and a half ago that we went through zoning through the county and got approved. We had the same concerns, and since then our neighbors have come and said, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know how it was going to happen, but this looks wonderful. They don't even know we're there. The kids are only outside for 2 hours a day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon to get exercise. The rest of the time they're in our classroom, in our garage, that we changed our garage into our classroom. We modeled both of these after an existing Murfreesboro daycare home, which is a half a mile from this home, and it's called Little Rascals. Miss Debbie, who runs that and has approval by the board, is the exact same model we're wanting to do at Marymount. It's the exact same model we did on Manning Court. I'd like Melissa to add to that if she can.
We've discovered that offering an in-home daycare is something that fits a lot of families' needs. There's several children that don't perform as well in larger center-type facilities. I've been a director at 2 larger facilities that housed 130-plus children, and it consisted of at least 9 or 10 classrooms. Since then, in the past 2 years of us operating from an in-home daycare, which I had experience doing that before for actually working for Miss Debbie that lives on Yorktown Court, which, like my husband said, is less than a mile from the Marymount address. She's been in business for over 10 years. She hasn't had any issues with her neighbors, and it all has to do with the way things are run. We are state licensed. I've always intended to be a state licensed facility. We have to follow DHS rules and regulations, as well as it being our property. We want everything to be nice and pleasant looking and be more of an addition to the neighborhood than it being an eyesore. We take great pride in what we offer. Our parents enjoy having what we offer to them. It's more one-on-one with the children. They seem to learn a lot better, and it's something that we enjoy. We have a waiting list at our current location, and we have people contacting us constantly that live on the opposite end of town, which is where my daughter is now residing. We don't intend to cause any disruptances to the neighborhood. We're offering to do the privacy fence. No one will even see the children. They'll get dropped off at staggering times throughout the morning and picked up in the afternoon as well. When people apply, because they have to, submit an application to come to our school, we ask for a drop-off and pick-up time. We have to incur late fees on people that don't adhere to the drop-off pickup to ensure that people come when they're supposed to. We don't have any problems or any issues with any traffic backing up. People have different types of jobs. It's not like everyone works at one place and has to be there at a certain time and have to be picked up at a certain time. So we haven't encountered any problems with any of our neighbors in our current neighborhood, and we don't anticipate there to be any kind of traffic issues at the new location.
And to answer your question, the current driveway, the port, and the roundabout you will be able to put at least 12 cars on there, but we'll never anticipate more than 3 or 4 at a time. But we could put 12 cars on there if we had to, but would never anticipate more than that.
Does anyone?
Yeah, I've got a question. So, just comparing to Manning Court, where you are today. So, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that if I was going to be a client of yours, I would have to sign up for a specific time to drop off. Is that the same with respects to picking up, or not necessarily?
Yes. We close at 5 o'clock at our current location as well. People don't want to pay a late fee. The majority of parents, everyone wants to pick up their child. They've been away from them all day, so everyone comes as soon as they get off work to avoid getting caught in traffic in downtown Murfreesboro. I have people come from Nashville that work in Nashville. So starting right at 3 o'clock when the children wake up from their nap time, anywhere between 3 and 5 o'clock is when the majority of children are picked up. And it took me 2 years to get up to 12 kids. It's not anything that just happens, bam, you have all this going on. I had 4 kids for 8 months. We advertise through Facebook. We have a website, and that's how people learned about us, through word of mouth. So it's not anything that's going to be converged upon the neighborhood at one time.
So the 12 kids that you have now on Manning Court, how many cars are coming through there at any one particular time?
The most that we've had is 3 to 4.
Okay.
And our driveway accommodates every one of them. It's to where people can pull in and pull out without there being anyone backing up into the street. It's totally safe. Like I said, we follow all of the DHS guidelines.
We also have a back door that goes out into the yard, so our neighbors will never even see the kids, because once they're dropped off and come into the classroom, they go out the back door to play, and they come in the back door to play and go into the classroom. So they won't even know that they're there.
So you'll have a privacy fence around the perimeter, and how high would that fence be? And
6 to 8 feet.
6 to 8 feet.
The individual we're contacting right now, I'm getting with Home Depot on Friday to get an estimate on a 6 to 8 foot privacy fence. No less than 6 foot.
It'll be what construction? Will that be vinyl? Will that be wood? Will that
I'm going to try
be
to
chain
see
link?
what the prices are first. It'd be at least wood, but if we can afford vinyl, I would prefer vinyl. But it would depend on the price.
And you've already met with engineers or surveyors about designing your driveway to accommodate maximum of 12?
I have called twice, but have not got a response yet. So I am making an effort to call the engineers to find out which side that they want it on. It doesn't matter to us, and to find out exactly what we need to do.
We have had our concrete person that did our existing driveway already out there to get his ideas and everything and get estimates from him.
And this may be a question back to staff again, given the location of a corner lot on Marymount and Laurel Hill Court, I think it was, and having a circular drive, has it been like a traffic study? Is there a traffic study of having it that close and how that would impact traffic flow?
I talked with our traffic engineer, and he said, because it's a residential neighborhood and even up to 12 children, it wouldn't be anticipated to be a large traffic impact. His recommendation was that the loop driveway be pushed as far south along, it's Laurel Hill, as possible to keep it away from the intersection.
Right.
But otherwise, he didn't see any.
We would
any
prefer
problem with
that,
it.
honestly. We would prefer that.
The orientation of Marymount, so basically the westernmost part of Marymount for the other
For the loop driveway.
yeah.
It would be the southernmost part of the lot, so sort of the southeastern corner of the property.
Coming off of Laurel Hill as opposed
Right,
to
right. It's really would the drawings that they've shown they would utilize, or it would be in the same place as the existing driveway, which currently feeds off of Laurel Hill.
I guess I was seeing that drawing. I may have just misread the drawing. I was looking. It looked like to me the loop was wholly on Marymount, so it's not. It's coming off Laurel Hill. Okay, I feel better about that part. You question. I got a question about a comment you made about the value. The concerns from the public are not what your property's worth, but
Right.
how your property affects their value.
Right. And
you stated that that you had your property appraised in 2009, and then again in 2016,
Right.
and you had an appreciation in value. However, obviously the economy has improved, and you added gross living area to a garage that was unfinished
Right.
or semi-finished.
Yes, sir.
So that's not really a relevant comparison.
Well, to make the comparison on our property, they had to compare properties that were being sold around us.
Right.
And that is where they got the comparison for our property, is all the properties that were sold around us that matched the exact same scenario that we were in. They all sold at that amount.
Right, but your gross living area changed
Yes, sir.
from what it was, so it's not.
Yes,
There,
sir.
there was an
Apples
additional 400 square foot added from enclosing the garage
Right.
area.
Yes, sir.
How many employees do you have?
One, it will be my daughter. According to what age children enroll there, you have to follow what's called a ratio chart. The older group of children you have determines how many teachers you have. We have a large family. We have 7 children combined. The majority of them work in daycare. I have a daughter that owns 2 centers, and then we have our in-homes as well. So we already have in place, and they've already been cleared through DHS to have a second employee when that time occurs. We want to be licensed from 1-year-old to 5-year-olds. We don't have many younger than 2 at our current location. That determines 2 to 5-year-olds, you have to have 2 people. If you have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, 1 person. So the second employee will come into play as needed.
If you had 12 2 to 5-year-olds, how many staff would you have to have?
If I had 12 of how many?
If you had 12 kids that were between the ages of 2 and 5, how many staff do you have to have?
2.
2.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the applicants? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present who wishes to speak for or against the application, if you'd come forward and state your name and address for us and give us any comments you may have.
Hi, my name is Kelly Perrin. My address is 2437 Laurel Hill Court. I've lived at this house for the past decade. The Elliots just moved next door to me weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, I learned from the sign that they had applied to run a 12-child daycare out of their residence. I've struggled a lot thinking about coming up here and speaking in opposition. This isn't a pleasant situation for me, and I don't wish to have any contention with my neighbors. However, I must request that you deny this permit. I think it's great that Miss Elliott wants to run a daycare. I just am not comfortable with it being 40 to 50 feet from my front door. Before we moved to Rutherford County, my husband and I did a lot of online research, choosing some houses to purchase. And when we got to Rutherford County, we had a realtor drive us around to several locations in Laverne, Smyrna, and in Murfreesboro, around Cason Lane. We chose this particular house because it is in a very quiet, well-established neighborhood. Most of the residents here are retired. We also chose a house on a cul-de-sac to further lower and limit the amount of traffic that passes by our house. I've spoken to Miss Brittany about her plans, and she told me about the privacy fence and the circle drive, where they want to put it as close to my front yard as possible. I'm unaware if the city will approve that or not. However, whether they do approve the circle drive or not, that is an additional 12 vehicles 2 times a day, very close to my front yard and porch. I have recently been assigned a position to work from home starting in November. I accepted this position based on the idea that my house was going to be conducive to a good work environment. But with 12 children just feet away from my office windows, I'm worried about the noise. Just Monday, I took lunch and was sitting on my front porch and heard a woman screaming and a child crying in a house with closed doors while I was sitting on the porch, and just worried what an additional 10 people, what noise level that's going to bring. I am concerned about this being a private nuisance. That is the definition of a person's enjoyment and use of his land. The law recognizes that landowners or rightful possession of the land have the right to unimpaired condition of the property, reasonable comfort and convenience of its occupation. Examples of private nuisance interfering with comfort, convenience, or health of the occupant include loud noises or something that disturbs the occupant's mental tranquility. Like Ms. Kennedy said, she has a Facebook page and they have signs in the yard right now. I did some online research and have learned that this is actually a secondary location to the primary location. On 9/6, on their Facebook page, they posted about their second location opening. The post indicates they have a waiting list. I have heard they are pre-enrolling kids to this daycare before they've received approval from the board. I have a picture of the Facebook post if I could pass that out, or if you are interested. How can I be confident that they're going to follow rules and regulations when they're already conducting business now? If this permit is approved and I am run out of the neighborhood, I have concern about the resale of my house. When I moved here in the county and visited Laverne and Smyrna and Murfreesboro, if the realtor drove me beside a church or a park or a daycare, I asked him to keep driving. I didn't have any interest in being so close to a lot of comings and goings. How many thousands of dollars am I going to lose by lowering the sale price of my house because the potential buyers don't want to live by a daycare. That is one of my concerns. I hope that you choose to keep the integrity of my neighborhood residential. I have been in contact with Mr. Anthony, and he shared with me that since he has been in this position, only 2 special use permits have been denied by this board. And I also know that Mr. Kennedy has a lot of influence in our community, and he's involved in this establishment as this is his second location to his primary business, as it's posted on the social media site. In closing, I ask that you put yourself in my place as you consider those of us that have to live with the decision. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Daniel Perrin, Kelly's husband. Also live at 2437 Laurel Hill Court. I have 3 main concerns about the placement of this daycare, one of which is traffic in our neighborhood, and the others, as Kelly mentioned, are about property values and about potential nuisance to our home. I actually have several slides here. If I could pass these out, some pictures of the surrounding area. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Great, thank you. I'll try to be as brief as I can. One of the things that's fairly unusual about our neighborhood, especially in the city of Murfreesboro, is that there's very limited access to it. There are really only 2 ways in and out of our neighborhood, no through streets, and so we have a particularly low level of traffic, and that's why many of us do live there. And that's obviously even more true with the cul-de-sac that we live on. If you look at this map, you'll notice the red star on there marks their house where the potential daycare would be. And the 2 red lines that you see there mark the major thoroughfares in and out of our neighborhood. And the SBs that I have in the black boxes mark school bus, approximate locations of school bus stops. And so one of my concerns is in the mornings, there are now going to be up to a dozen people coming in and out of the neighborhood while children are standing at these school bus stops. And I don't know if you have children that you took to daycare in the past. I know I did. And one thing that will be common, I think this is undeniable, is that when people are running late for work, they're going to fly in and out of the neighborhood quite fast, trying to get their kids to daycare, trying to get to work. I know I was guilty of that, and other people would be, but I didn't take my kid to a daycare in a neighborhood. So we are very concerned about that. Most importantly, really, is the school bus stop that is right there on the exact same corner where the daycare would be. And so people would have to come in, go past the kids standing there on the corner to get into the drive on the other side. On the second page, you'll see some pictures that are taken from across Marymount. This will be the approach of the cars toward their house. You can see the arrows indicating the proposed locations of the U-Drive or the Circle Drive, and the bottom picture there gives you an idea of where the school bus stop is, and people would have to come in from this location, and so you can see how close proximity that is. You can also see the signs already out in the yard in the top picture advertising the presence of the daycare. On the next page, you get a more up-close view that gives you an idea of the proximity of their house to our house. There on the left, you'll see the red truck. That is my house. And you see there's actually a fairly narrow space between the 2 houses. And as was just discussed earlier, the Circle Drive, they're proposing to push that as close to our property line as possible, and that's really just going to put it right there in front of our front porch. On the next page, you'll see a direct view between the houses and the red line there marking the current fence line, and they're proposing to put the privacy fence there. It would come directly toward your viewpoint and create a very narrow space between the side of our house and the line there, the 6 to 8 foot fence. On the page after that, you'll see 3 pictures from our front porch looking at the side of their house. This is where the fence would be, and you see the red lines in the bottom 2 pictures. Should give you some idea of what the view would now be off of our front porch if there is a large privacy fence there. And I think all of this constriction right against our house makes a very strong argument for the fact that it is going to make it more difficult to sell our house than it would be right now. If somebody comes to look at the house, they're going to see this circle drive, all this concrete right in front of the house, the side view of the house. We have a wraparound porch. That's all going to be obstructed. On the page after that, you'll see views from inside our house. On the top is a view from our dining room where you can see the backyard and the side of the house, and also at the bottom looking toward the front of their house. And then the one on the side, I think, is really the main point that my wife brought up. This is a view from our upstairs bedroom where her office is going to be, and you can see it looks directly down into their backyard. Regardless of what privacy fence is there, that is not going to prevent noise from going right up to that window and disturbing her in that office for at least an hour twice a day. So I think with all these things in mind, it's very clear that this has a large potential impact on our property value with signs outside and obvious daycare as you approach the house. I think there is a real concern about the fact that there are school bus stops down some narrow streets where people are going to be coming in and out, and these people don't live in our neighborhood and may not have the same concerns for the safety of children that are standing at those school bus stops. And so I think overall, adding that traffic to this very quiet area that has limited access is going to have a significant impact on our way of life in that neighborhood. And so for those reasons, I'd ask you to deny this permit. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Obviously, you've done a lot of work on this. Have you conducted any studies or had anybody conduct studies on the impact of a in-home daycare and its effect on property values?
No, I have not. This is what I wanted to just show you was what the proposed changes would be like and how that's going to affect it, being very proximal to our property.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lee Kennedy. I live on Ashlawn Drive that comes and Marymount meets Ashlawn Drive. I've lived there for 30 years, and my children have grown up there, and a majority of the families that live in this subdivision have lived there for a long period of time. There was an application for a daycare several years ago, and we had voiced the same concerns, and we feel that we still have those same concerns, and that zoning request was denied. I do have a couple other issues that have not been brought up. One is that this is in the city where their other property is in the county. And the other thing that I feel is we're not having an issue with the quality of their daycare. We're having an issue with depreciating our property value and the close proximity of additional cars. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Roger Wainick. I live at 1415 Marymount, right next door to this property. I've been there for 30 years also. My neighbors have already given you a majority of all of our concerns, but I personally think the value of the property or not, if I was looking for a home, I would not want to go buy a home next to a daycare. I would not look at it. So even if it doesn't change the value, it does limit the ability to sell your home. And I personally don't want to live next to a daycare. If I had I would have bought next to a daycare. It's a very quiet neighborhood. I have a grandson that we love to get him. He's learning how to ride a bicycle, and it's a very quiet neighborhood, very little traffic, so it's very easy to do something like that. with addition to this daycare, with additional traffic, I don't think I wouldn't be as apt to do things like that with my grandson. I have a fence, a chain link fence right next to this property. I have a dog that we let out in the backyard a lot. If they don't put the privacy fences, I'm concerned about liability issues. If the children are out there playing and there's a chain link fence and my dog's in the backyard and they poke their fingers through the thing and there's something happens, what's my liability? So I'm concerned about the liability issues of that. Plus, they talk about building a privacy fence, and that does that mean they're going to build all this is going to happen before they start keeping children there, or not? I don't know. But I, for one, am not in favor of this daycare. Thank you.
Sir, would you mind repeating your name for the record?
Roger Waynick.
Can you spell the last name for me?
Waynick.
Thank
I live at 1415.
My name is Laura Hauk. I live at 2440 Laurel Hill Court, which is catty corner from the property in question. I am in agreement with my neighbors, as well as in our neighborhood, it is, as been said, very low traffic, very quiet. There are people walking their pets, dogs, their children in strollers with no concern of high traffic. And it's not at just 7 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is throughout the day. There are people that are retired. They take their grandchildren, walk with them. I've seen them. My husband and I have 2 dogs ourselves. We have to walk when we're not at home, when we get home from work. So it's going to be, different times of the day. I am in agreement that this needs to be denied. The bus stop is an issue. There's a city bus stop and there's also a county bus stop. And they are both on the corners. And they come, the bus I'm aware of is the county bus stops at about 7:15 in the morning and comes again about 3:25 to 3:30 in the afternoon. So that is going to be their prime time for their customers to be dropping off their children. So I am in hopes that you guys will see this and deny it, please.
My name is Ken Chastain. I own the property at 1407 Marymount Drive, which is directly across Laurel Hill from the proposed daycare center. My wife and I moved to that house in 2011 when we first moved to Murfreesboro. We don't live in that house anymore. We built a house a little outside the city, but we now lease the house out, and the concerns about the bus stop and the traffic in the neighborhood were phoned to me by the tenants that I currently have living there, who are very concerned about the daycare, not because of the property value, because that's not their concern. They just don't want to live across the street from the daycare. So it certainly is going to affect how I can rent this house out in the future and what I can rent it for in the future, in addition to the property values. But they were also very concerned about the school bus stop issue, since they have children in the neighborhood as well. So I'm also prefer that this would be denied. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Hi, I'm Shirley Mack, and I live at 1423 Marymount Drive. I was the previous applicant in 2005 for the group child care home, and I understand the pros and the cons of what the neighbors are concerned about. But I have been in child care for about 30 years, off and on. I've owned 3 previous daycare centers of my own, and I'm an advocate for children having a comfortable, cozy environment with child care. And at the same time that I placed my application, one of the concerns that the neighbors had was the traffic and those sorts of things. And as the applicants have expressed, the arrival, all the kids don't come at one time, they don't leave at one time, so the traffic is staggering. And there is a lot of traffic in our neighborhood already. It's not like an extreme volume of traffic, but I really don't believe that it'll be such an extreme amount of an addition to the traffic that it would be such a problem that, considering the children, concerning the children, I believe the children need to have a homey, comfortable environment to stay in for child care throughout the day. So I'm for the daycare center.
My name is Chris Hauk. I live across the street. And Hauk, H-O-U-K, Chris. I'm not sure I can say anything any better than what's already been said. So my question to you guys would be, given the situation, would you buy a home next to a daycare? So I just want to go on record as I stand in opposition to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Philip Raines, and I live directly across the street from these people at 1418 Marymount Drive. Every morning, I sit on my porch, and I watch the traffic go by. That's the kind of person I am. I watch the children, as the young lady indicated, getting picked up at 7:15, plus the other gentleman that owns the house across from them, they have a disabled child that has a bus come and pick them up too. At approximately that time, can you expect what the traffic will be like turning in and out of a cul-de-sac to go into a circular drive? There is quite a bit of traffic on that street because I see it every day. There also will be a considerable, to me, looking at their house every day from my front porch, an increase in noise. There's no way you can get around that, no matter what you do. Plus, the liability of the children's safety, even with privacy fences. And I don't want to reiterate what everybody else has said, but directly I feel this is not a good idea. And additionally, I'd ask this council to consider having someone do a study, I've heard this several times now, to focus on what it would do to my property value if projected, in the future. If I decided that I needed to move or wanted to, can't they tell me that, with a daycare across the street, will it hurt me, other than everybody is appreciating over time or whatever? Those are my concerns. Thank you.
My name is Judy Wanick, and I live at 1415 Marymount Drive. And for the neighbors, it's not just that we're against a daycare center. We live in a residential neighborhood. If we wanted to live near a commercial neighborhood, we would live somewhere else. And there are other buildings, commercial buildings, where you can put a business. And I just think I don't want you to set a precedence where first I have a daycare center in my neighborhood, then I have a barber shop in my neighborhood, then I have a hair salon in my neighborhood, then I have a masseuse in my neighborhood and a nail salon in my neighborhood, and now I really don't live in a residential neighborhood anymore. I live in a commercial neighborhood. Thank you.
I would just make one final comment that I'm Shirley Mack at 1423 Marymount Drive. That at the time that I made application in 2005, I did a study and I found there were 9 other operating businesses in our neighborhood at that time.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Before against it? Let me finish the public hearing, then we'll let you come back with some comments. Is that all the comments? Okay. We'll close the public hearing and we'll allow you a brief minute to try to address some of the issues if you can.
I was taking notes so I could address some of the concerns that the neighbors have. First of all, signs were put in the yard, and that was for their benefit, to where they had a phone number to call, and they could have spoke directly to me, and I could have answered any questions that they had. I could have offered, to give them my website of my current and let them take a look at what we planned on doing. As far as the privacy fence, this book I have right here are rules and regulations that I have to follow through DHS. Of course, we would have a fence put up. Of course, we would have the driveway put in place before there's any kids being watched at that home. There are several people that watch children throughout the neighborhood that my daughter's found out from walking through the streets with her children in the afternoons like some of these people do. You don't have to have a license to watch 4 kids in your home. I don't believe you have to have zoning to watch 7 kids in your home. It's when you want to watch from 7 to 12 kids that you have to have this special use permit. I've stated before that we had staggering drop-offs and pickups. At our current location, we also have the bus stop on the corner of our property. We live on a corner lot. It's public knowledge that people come and go throughout neighborhoods all throughout the day. We don't anticipate any of our parents to drive like maniacs, coming to drop off their children and put their children in danger, as well as other children that live in the neighborhood. We want to offer something to the community that parents are wanting. We're not trying to destroy the neighborhood. We're just trying to offer a service that, through me having one already, I see there's a great demand for. There will never be 12 cars there at one time. The only time there would be more than the 3 or 4 cars is if my own personal family comes over to visit, because we do have a large family. We don't allow parking on the streets at our current location. We don't anticipate having anyone having a need to park on the streets at the new location. The kids only go out twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and that's when weather permits. There's times that the temperature is too hot, there's times when the temperature is too cold, and then we have rain. So it's not like there's going to be kids outside making noise all throughout the day. The afternoon playtime occurs whenever kids are out of school anyway. So with it being a neighborhood where there's lots of children that attend the local school and people walking around with their children and kids riding bikes and all, there's going to be noise from children playing regardless. Where we live at now, there's only one access into our neighborhood to get to our home. There hasn't been any complaints from our neighbors, which on our street generally is people that are retired. They had the same concerns. They thought that there were going to be children screaming and squealing all day long, that they couldn't sit outside and enjoy any free time that they have. The sound of kids playing, I don't feel like is anything irritating. And like I said, it would only be twice a day when weather permits that they would be outside to get a little bit of free time. Having the privacy fence would not keep all of the sound away, I know, but no one would have to sit down on their front porch and see kids through a chain link fence if that is something that they don't feel like is something they want to see every day. The drop-off and pickup would be staggered, like I said. They would go directly into the classroom, and when they exit into the playground area, they would go out the back door into the fenced area. And like the lady, which I had never met before, that came up and said, when she stated the facts about there being other businesses in that area, like I said, less than a mile away, there's another in-home daycare that's state licensed that's been operating for 12 years. Obviously, it's not caused any problems or concerns, and it's located back behind the Northfield area. Do you not think that there's children everywhere around that school? No one's been hit by a parent going to drop off at that other daycare. We don't want to create any kind of harm to children. We're there to protect children. and we hope that you would really consider our request for a permit.
Are there any further questions for staff or a motion on this one?
Question to the staff is how come, again, I've only been on with this board for a few months, so this appears to be a fairly common occurrence to have in-home daycare facilities in the city of Murfreesboro, and each time they have to meet these particular guidelines, correct?
Correct, yes.
Depending, of course, on the numbers with children. I think there is up to 4 that doesn't require, I think.
That's right. That's right. There are different. The city zoning follows the state classifications on number of children, and I think I think the ordinance starts with 4, and so there's a classification called I think it's family daycare home that's like 4 to 7 children, and then once you get beyond 7, it's the group daycare.
So the
home.
applicant was correct in that fact that 0 to 4 do not require any special use.
I believe that is
and up
correct.
to 7 do not require any special use.
I believe that between 4 and 7 would require a special use permit.
At the same level as they would have to come before the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Correct.
In that case as well as the case that they come in. And I think the applicants, and there may have been comments about the applicants' other operations, that was not, they live in Magnolia Trace, which is in Rutherford County, so
right.
I assume they had to comply with whatever Rutherford County's planning and codes requires, and not, they wouldn't be under our purview in the first place.
That's correct.
I heard a lot of comments. I guess I'm going to, instead of a question, make a comment. I heard a lot of comments. I respect what everyone had to say. I heard extreme amount of comments about the concerns on their property values. And I have to tell you, I've been a certified general appraiser for well over 15 years. I've been in the real estate business for and banking and finance for over 30 years. I've not been aware of any studies that, and in the scope of my practice, where I have seen that in-home daycares, like's being proposed, has had any impact on the values of other homes. You know, we all have our preferences about what we want living next door to us. If you live out in the county, you know, you can say, well, I don't want to live next to a poultry facility, or I don't want to live next door to you know, a manufactured home, or whatever preferences we have. In the city, and especially in areas of the city that are mature neighborhoods, much like this neighborhood is, you're going to see things in transition. You're going to see neighborhoods evolve over time, and there will be uses just the same as people don't want to be. Some people don't want to be in a neighborhood where the neighborhood turns over to where everything is a rental property, or predominantly rental property, because of the concerns that they have, what element that may bring. So your concerns were well noted as far as traffic and so forth, and how those kind of things. But as far as the impact on the value of your home, from my opinion, from my experience, I wouldn't say that would be a big concern that you need to have. It may impact the number of people that come and look by it, but in our area, in our community, the extreme amount of demand for homes, there's not enough inventory to meet the demand, particularly in the price points where your houses are.
I'll make a comment. Whether this is the right thing to do or not, I've known Mr. Kennedy, or known of Mr. Kennedy, for a long time, and feel like that what he says he will do, he will do. That being said, my opinion of these special use permits as long as I've been on this board, I always take into consideration the comments of the neighbors with respects to, and we've got, this is a sheet of paper up here that gives us guidance as to what we would need to take into consideration either in approving or denying a special use permit. And the first one reads, that the proposed building or use will not have a substantial or undue adverse effect upon adjacent property, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, and so on. I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm not a planning engineer. All I can take into consideration is if the neighbors feel like it's going to change the character of the neighborhood, that's the opinion that I try to consider the most, because this is I agree with Mr. Tips, there's going to be transitions, but the fact of the matter is they're coming here and asking for a change. So I am not at a party to approve this request.
I would echo Mr. Halliburton's comments. I feel certain I can tell from the way their presentation that they know how to run one of these successfully and know the rules and would be good operators of something like this. As we see these, each case is a little different of how the lot's situated and what's around and that sort of thing. And with being in a corner lot, there's 3 or 4 properties that are really close to the rear of this, and they're going to be affected by it. And I just have a tough time with this location. You have a lot of neighbors who have been there a long time, and then the new guys, while I think they'll be good operators, and it's nothing. I don't have any reservations with that. It's just, is this location the right one? And for me, I just have a tough time with this one.
And we've approved so many of these in-home daycares, and most of the time when we do have people that just totally don't want it there, it's hard for us to make a decision on what to do. I think it would be a lovely daycare according to the pictures and everything, but I'm just at the point of I'll just agree with what my colleagues want to do.
Did you say you agree or you disagree?
I will agree with whatever
you agree.
you all want
Okay.
to do, because I don't know.
Okay.
Because like I said, we have approved so many in-home daycares since I've been on this board for 10 years. But usually it's not 10 people that disagree with it being in the neighborhood.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion that we deny the request.
And I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to deny. Is there any further discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That application's been denied. Thank you for coming in. Next item on our agenda is staff reports and other business.
We do not have anything. We will have a 2017 meeting calendar. I'll get that out to you here in just a couple of weeks so that we can vote on it, hopefully at the next meeting.
Sounds good. With that, we'll be adjourned.